Return of the Prodigal Son, Rembrandt. Date of origin 1668 to 1669. Dimensions 103.2 by 81.1 inches. Medium oil on canvas. Current location State Hermitage Museum, St. Petersburg, Russia. This religious painting depicts a scene that takes place in the dimly lit courtyard of a vineyard house. A wayside fallen son knelt in front of his loving father. The two join in mutual embrace, and four other figures look on from varied degrees of near to distant. The monumental size of the work allowed the artist to create life-size figures. The palette is kept in warm, honeycomb hues, earthy russet and warm amber golds, strong saturated reds, and affluent bronzes. The painter's masterful use of soft and warm light is visible in even the deepest shadows. The brightest of the soft light draws out not only the father and titular son, but also the foremost peripheral figure, an observer watching from the right edge of the painting. This is the brother of the kneeling man. His silhouette acts as a countermeasure for the two central figures. The pivotal moment in this canvas takes place on the left. The son, fallen to his knees at his father's feet, is shown with his back to the viewer and face turned in right profile, buried in the bosom of his father, who hunches forward toward him and us. The son seems to have frozen still. His head is slovenly shaven. His cut and bruised left foot is bare, with its worn-out sandal lying next to it. His right foot is still clad in a sandal whose leather heel is completely worn away. He wears a grayish-brown loose ragged robe girded with twine string. A pouch and short scabbard are slung from the string, a rich man's son in a grifted traveler's tatters. His gray-haired, gray-bearded father leans huddled over him, as if to hearten the reclaimed son and show no grudge. The elder wears a long tunic with sleeves adorned in precious metals under a long crimson cloak with corner tassels. His head lowered, eyelids drooped and nearly closed, his gaze falls on a large torn-out hole in his son's garment. The tear is framed by the father's left hand on his son's shoulder and his right hand on his son's back. His hands differ like those of completely different people. The left one is sturdy, sinewy, and toil-weathered. The right is more delicate, smooth, and of narrower bone structure, as if almost feminine in comparison. While welcoming his son, he might well be fighting back a flood of both relief and concern. This aged and worry-worn elder, who both hugs the repentant son and protects him, is a symbol of boundless fatherly love and forgiveness. The figure of the other son at the painting's right edge stands at the threshold of his father's house, as if faithfully standing post and guarding the entrance. Is the brother jealous of his father's outpouring of love? He is depicted in left profile with line of sight on his father, his thin lips pursed, gaze lowered. The regal-looking man's face is covered with thick salt and pepper facial hair. His dark hair escapes a turban on his head. His clasped hands press the top of a thin cane to his belly, and his crimson cloak resembles his father's. Although he squarely faces his father and brother, the man seems to be driven aback, his posterior half backed into darkness, his face in front only faintly illuminated with the remainder of the glowing light that shines on his father and brother's embrace. Back in the middle ground, between the father and the other son, there are two shaded figures. One, a man with a thin, outswept mustache and large, billowy, black, soft-crowned hat, sits cross-legged directly at the brother's right elbow, with one hand on his ankle and the other clutched over his chest to a shoulder-draped stole. He observes the scene pensively with dark, wide, open eyes. The other figure lurks a few feet further back from behind an ornately carved pillar which he hugs. He is a younger man, with wispy shoulder-length blonde hair and no cover. He is the only figure in the painting that seems to lack a somber face. From craned neck, he watches the scene with a wide-eyed, slight grin. At the top left corner of the painting, in the furthest, deepest, darkest shadows, and under a background archway, there is yet another figure. It is a woman with long blonde hair who stands in the half-open archway door. She wears the ruffled dress and cameo choker of a privileged person. Her body remains side-turned toward the door jamb. Her wide eyes appear trained on the father and son's embrace. The return of the prodigal son relates to the biblical parable on the prodigal son in the Gospel of St. Luke. But, as in the case with the other works by Rembrandt, this multi-layered masterpiece can be interpreted in the bibliographical context. A repentant sinner returns to his family where he receives forgiveness. An aged Rembrandt already knew well that soon enough he would have to face God, his heavenly Father, and judgment for his earthly promiscuous life, a life that the painter expressed in previous paintings such as The Prodigal Son of the Brothel or The Self-Portrait with Saskia, a work which depicts a frolicking couple during an alcoholic binge in a tavern. Even though the theme of the return of the prodigal son might seem at first blush celebratory, it is in fact saturated with suffering and sadness. The authentic message of the painting is touching. It is very personal and emotional. What is characteristic of Rembrandt's art, apart from his lighting technique or chiaroscuro, is the faithfulness to detail when it comes to historical garments representing Renaissance fashion. It gives the work an oriental character, enriched with other elements as the painter saw fit. The Baroque character of this painting is visible in the theatricality of the scene, showing the fragility of human life, as well as the masterful operating with light and building shadow effects.